Welcome to KT Quick Reviews, where I play a game for about an hour or so and tell you about it. I once again broke my casual rule of playing a game for an hour or so and proceeded to play nearly 40 hours of Returnal, but the void had a dark grip on me. The white shadow called. I must answer. So let's talk about it. The reason this game isn't getting a larger entry is because the story is fairly obtuse and fragmented, and despite beating the main game and the side stuff, I still don't feel I have every piece I need to understand it. I also just don't want to spoil it because I feel people should really experience it for themselves. I recently picked up this game because I wanted to delve more into space horror as a whole. I've already played the Dead Space remake as well as Callisto Protocol, two very heavily action-oriented story games, so I figured Returnal would be a good break from that. Yes, it has its fair share of combat, but going from a third-person action drama to a nicely paced roguelike was a nice change of, well, pace. As for many games I've played recently, Returnal is basically my first foray into the roguelike genre. I did play Deathloop to completion, that game having the same looping time mechanics as well as roguelike elements, but it's obviously a very different feel from the run and gun and almost bullet hellish aspects of Returnal. For those who don't know what a roguelike is, allow me to give a very brief and probably inaccurate definition. Essentially, the mechanics play out as you start with basic stats, work your way through a randomly generated or predetermined area, pick up items that help you along the way, and eventually try and make it to the end. And if you die, you start all over at zero. Some games break this rule by allowing you permanent stat increases, certain kinds of gear, different characters, and even environmental items such as keys and maps, just to ensure your run gets a bit easier as you go on. Returnal falls into the category of essentially starting you over from scratch, but you keep getting suit upgrades as well as keys and consumable items called ethers. Oh, and speaking of those suit upgrades, can I please talk about how this game is a massive love letter to the Metroid series? If you've been itching for a Metroid game but haven't been satisfied by the more recent installments or lack thereof, I highly recommend picking up Returnal. The minimap system, level designs, gear upgrades, heck, everything screams classic and prime era Metroid. Okay, let me get a brief rundown of the story, or what I seem to understand, real quick. The game opens with a ship crashing on the planet of Atropos. The pilot, Celine, has found herself amongst a dark forest filled with the crumbled ruins of a sentient species. The whole goal of the game is to essentially make your way through each area and try to pick up logs from her previous selves on how to potentially break the cycle and get off the planet. There's 6 different biomes the player can explore and a plethora of consumables as well as artifacts and weapons. I found most passive buffs useful, but when it came to weapons, I only ever ran with 3. The starting pistol as well as 2 variant machine guns. The game does allow for stronger weapons as you go because of the proficiency system as well as secondary fires and buffs to the weapons themselves. But once you end up getting a Hollow Seeker that has a level 3 portal beam and or void beam, you really don't need anything else. The Hollow Seeker rips through almost anything, and if you don't get it, the beam will. And the adrenaline system. Essentially, the longer you go killing enemies and without getting hit, you gain bonuses up to 5 levels. Improved reload mechanics, improved scan, melee, currency collection, and then a shield which protects you from any kind of hit. You can also get several artifacts that essentially make any runner with high adrenaline broken. Oh, and the game also has a melee. I wasn't sure where to mention it. It's really mainly used as a utility to get through certain things, but it's extremely powerful and also cuts through certain projectiles. The only reason I didn't favor it more is because I found the timing hard to adjust to, but honestly, that's just me. I also couldn't adjust to the dash or the jump either. I'm just not good at a game like this. The enemies in this game are also varied and interesting and only reusing a few concepts here and there. I loved getting to a new biome, getting rocked, and then going back and learning the patterns of all the monsters. The only time it got frustrating was in the last biome, they obviously wanting it to be the hardest, so they throw every kind of mini-boss-like enemy at you. Oh, and the bosses. I loved the bosses. Each one had great designs and were frustrating yet fun player experiences. I don't want to cover them all in great detail cause we'd be here all day. There's so much more going on below the surface, but again, I would love for people to experience it on their own. This game is touted for being extremely difficult, but honestly, I didn't have a hard time with it at all. I took my blows, got back up, and just kept going, and I don't regret it at all. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this kind of content or even longer form videos, please be sure to subscribe, and if you want to help me out in other ways, I also have a Patreon. I'll see you all in the next video.